How great is this chapter in your life?
The top of the top. Takes a piece of paper, turns it around, and she pushes it to me and
Picture this. A folded note sliding across a polished mahogany table. 3 words written in elegant script.
please say yes.
Please say yes. The camera pulls back slowly, revealing not a young romantic lead in the flush of new love, but Richard Gere at 76, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, still radiating that unmistakable magnetism that once made him Hollywood's most dangerous leading man. The lighting is perfect, as it always is around him. Warm amber tones that catch the lines of experience etched into his face, each one a story of passion, restraint, and the kind of life most people only dream about. The studio feels intimate, almost conspiratorial. Velvet furniture, low lighting, the kind of setup designed for secrets. The interviewer leans forward with a question every actor has learned to dodge, deflect, or laugh away. Who were the women you secretly wanted? The ones who made you forget your lines, lose your focus, question your professionalism? It's the kind of inquiry that usually ends in practiced charm and careful evasion. But Gere does something unexpected. He leans back, genuinely amused, his eyes glinting with mischief that age hasn't diminished. If anything, it's sharpened it. That famous smile spreads across his face, the one that launched 1,000 fantasies and sold millions of movie tickets. He knows exactly what he's about to do, knows the ripples it will send through social media and entertainment news cycles. "You want the truth?" he asks, his voice carrying that distinctive blend of warmth and danger. "I'll give you the truth. 6 names, 6 stories, 6 confessions from Hollywood's last true seducer. The kind of honesty that only comes when you've lived long enough to stop caring about the rules. To understand what makes this moment extraordinary, you have to understand the mythology of Richard Gere. This is the man who defined cinematic desire for an entire generation. The beautiful drifter in American Gigolo, all angles and mystery and perfectly tailored suits. The gentleman who climbed a fire escape in Pretty Woman, making every woman in the theater believe in fairy tales again. The slick lawyer in Chicago who made moral ambiguity look like the sexiest thing in the world. For decades, audiences couldn't separate the man from the characters. When Richard Gere appeared on screen, chemistry wasn't just good acting, it was his natural state. He didn't play passion, he embodied it. Every co-star interview mentioned the intensity, the focus, the way he made you feel like the only person in the room. Directors cast him not just for his talent, but for that indefinable quality that made cameras love him and audiences desire him. But here's what makes this interview different from typical celebrity gossip or tabloid speculation. Gere isn't bragging or name-dropping for publicity. At 76, there's a self-awareness to his reflections, a recognition that fantasy and memory have become beautifully, irreversibly intertwined. He's not the young star chasing conquests anymore. He's the elder statesman examining the landscape of his own heart with the kind of honesty that only distance provides. The interviewer can feel it too, that delicate balance between youthful impulse and mature nostalgia. Gere's answers will blend both, playful enough to entertain, honest enough to surprise. Some names you'll expect, the narrator's voice promises. Some will shock you. But all of them tell you exactly who Richard Gere really was, and maybe who he still is. Julia Roberts. He says the name slowly, savoring it like vintage wine, and his entire demeanor shifts. The smile becomes genuine, unguarded, touched with something that looks remarkably like wonder. If people thought there was heat on camera in Pretty Woman, they should have felt the air between takes. He paints the picture vividly. A Hollywood set in 1990, 2 actors discovering chemistry so electric it felt dangerous. Julia wasn't playing Vivian Ward. She was Vivian, all spontaneous energy and unfiltered emotion. She'd laugh at something, really laugh, and the entire crew would stop working just to watch her, Gere recalls. That kind of joy, that absolute lack of artifice, you can't manufacture it, can't rehearse it. She just existed, fully and completely, and everyone around her fell a little bit in love. The confession deepens. He admits the hardest part of filming wasn't hitting his marks or remembering his lines. It was maintaining the boundary between character and reality. Every glance we exchanged, every touch scripted for the camera, blurred the line between Edward Lewis wanting Vivian and Richard wanting Julia. You spend 12 hours a day gazing at someone like that, touching their face, holding their hand, whispering intimacies. Even when you know it's all pretend, your body doesn't care. Your heart doesn't check the script. He pauses, chuckling at the memory, his voice dropping to something almost confessional. I used to joke with the director that if Julia had ever crooked a finger, gestured me toward her trailer, the crew would still be waiting for us to come back. And the crazy thing is, I wasn't entirely joking. But there's no regret in his voice, only gratitude for the experience, for the film, for the memory of a connection that was real, even if it never crossed certain lines. That's the thing about Julia, he concludes, his smile warm and genuine. She taught me that desire isn't always about what happens. Sometimes it's about what could have happened, and how that possibility makes everything more alive. The tone shifts as Gere mentions the next name, Diane Lane. There's less nostalgia here, more raw acknowledgement of something that felt genuinely dangerous. Unfaithful wasn't just another movie about marital betrayal. It was temptation filmed in slow motion, every scene dripping with the kind of adult desire that most Hollywood films only pretend to understand. Diane brought something to that role that went beyond acting, Gere says carefully, choosing his words with precision. Natural sensuality isn't something you can fake or learn in an acting class. It's either there or it isn't. With Diane, it was there. This gravity she carried that made every scene feel heavier, more significant than the script alone could justify. He admits the complexity of playing a character dealing with his wife's affair, while feeling, in certain moments, the authentic pull of attraction toward his co-star. There were moments when the line between my character's pain and my own complicated feelings blurred. Her whispers, her half-smiles, the way she could load a single glance with meaning. It was too real to dismiss as professional craft. The vulnerability in his admission is striking. This isn't about conquest fantasies or locker room bragging. It's about a veteran actor wrestling honestly with the strange alchemy that happens when performance and genuine feeling intersect. Some actors you work with and there's chemistry. With others, there's something more dangerous, recognition, like you're seeing parts of each other that maybe should stay hidden. He ends with a half laugh, shaking his head. If she'd ever suggested blurring that line for real, even once, I wouldn't have had the strength to stop her. Thank God we both had more sense than our characters did. Michelle Pfeiffer. Gere's voice carries a different quality now. Not heat, but fascination. Ice and fire wrapped in elegance, he describes. The kind of woman every co-star both feared and adored because she was simply more than anyone else in the room. He explains that Michelle fascinated him intellectually as much as physically. Smart women are terrifying, he admits with a grin. They see through your charm immediately. They know exactly when you're imagining something you shouldn't be imagining, and they file it away for later. Michelle had that quality, this laser-focus awareness that could strip away pretense in seconds. The memories he shares aren't from a film set, but from Hollywood's periphery. Award galas, industry parties, those carefully choreographed social events where everyone performs being themselves. I remember moments at various functions where we'd catch each other's eyes across a crowded room. One glance from Michelle could silence an entire conversation in your head. Suddenly nothing else mattered except wondering what she was thinking. His fantasy, he confesses, wasn't about conquest, but curiosity. The magnetic pull of a woman who could make you forget the world existed and then remind you of it with a single raised eyebrow. She had this way of existing that made you want to be better, smarter, more than you actually were. The grin returns, self-deprecating and honest. If Michelle Pfeiffer had ever said, "Let's go," I'd have been gone before my wine glass stopped shaking. And I'm not proud of that fact. I'm just honest about it. At 76, honesty is the only currency worth anything. Susan Sarandon. The name lands differently, with respect, with a hint of trepidation, with genuine admiration. Now there's a woman who doesn't just enter rooms, she owns them before she's fully through the door. Gere recalls their first real encounter, some industry event decades ago that's blurred in memory, except for the moment Susan looked directly at him. Her energy was like static electricity. You could feel it before you saw her, and her wit. God, she could cut you down to size with a smile and make you grateful for the experience. What made Susan different, he explains, was power. Not the manufactured Hollywood variety, but authentic presence. The kind that comes from knowing exactly who you are and refusing to apologize for it. She looked at you like she could read every thought you'd ever had and was daring you to admit them out loud. Most men found that intimidating. I found it intoxicating. For once, the legendary charmer admits to being the nervous one. You don't handle Susan Sarandon, he laughs. You don't seduce her or win her over with pretty words. You surrender, completely, and hope she finds you interesting enough to keep around. The reflection deepens. What I felt for Susan was never simple attraction. It was respect tangled with desire, the pull toward a woman who was both brilliant and beautiful, and who refused to separate those qualities to make insecure men comfortable. If she'd ever suggested anything beyond friendship, I'd have followed her anywhere, and I'd have been terrified the entire time. Sharon Stone. Gere lets the name hang in the air, loaded with implication. The interviewer shifts, intrigued, and Gere's expression becomes something between admiration and caution. Pure voltage, he says simply. Intellect fused with danger. He conjures the atmosphere of their shared Hollywood era, flashing cameras, exclusive clubs, the post-Basic Instinct moment when Sharon became synonymous with a particular brand of sophisticated danger. Sharon looked at you and you felt stripped bare. Not physically, anyone can do that. Spiritually. She saw through the persona, the carefully maintained public face, straight to whatever truth you were hiding from yourself. Her beauty, he notes, was weaponized confidence. Not vulnerability packaged as a lure, but strength that refused to soften itself for male comfort. She never apologized for being the smartest, most beautiful woman in any room. That kind of self-possession is rare. Most people found it threatening. I found it magnetic. When the interviewer jokes about the risk to reputation, about the danger of admitting attraction to someone so publicly associated with danger, Gere doesn't flinch. For Sharon Stone? In a heartbeat. No hesitation. Some opportunities are worth any risk. The narrator's voice returns, wry and knowing. Some flames burn too cold to touch, and that's exactly why men like him reach for them anyway. The danger isn't a warning, it's an invitation. The entire energy shifts when Gere speaks the next name. His voice softens, his posture relaxes, and the smile becomes almost reverent. Sophia Loren. He pauses, letting the weight of Hollywood history settle around those syllables. Sophia Loren wasn't an actress. She was an event, a phenomenon, a force of nature wrapped in the most beautiful package God ever created. He describes her presence as gravitational, not something you observe, but something you experience. You don't simply look at Sophia, you orbit her. When she enters a room, physics changes, time bends. Every person there, regardless of age or gender or orientation, falls under the spell. Even in his prime, Gere admits, surrounded by supermodels and starlets and the most beautiful women Hollywood could manufacture, Sophia remained the unattainable ideal. She represented something beyond contemporary beauty standards or trending aesthetics. She was timeless, the kind of gorgeous that existed before photography and will exist after all of us are dust. The fantasy he describes is vivid, but respectful. Imagining her perfume lingering in the air after she left a gala, the echo of her laugh across a crowded room, the hypothetical touch that could have rewritten his entire biography. People said she was untouchable, that mere mortals shouldn't even dare to fantasize. Maybe they were right. But if Sophia Loren had ever let me try, if she'd ever given the slightest indication that Richard Gere interested her, the cameras would have captured something Hollywood wasn't ready for. It's the most honest moment yet, not about conquest, but about awe, about recognizing beauty and presence so complete that desire becomes almost spiritual rather than physical. The interviewer laughs, slightly disbelieving, checking to see if Gere is serious. The crew has gone silent, cameras still rolling, everyone realizing they're witnessing something unusual, an icon confronting his own mythology without armor or pretense. "You understand?" Gere says, his tone shifting to something more philosophical. "I'm not boasting. I'm not trying to convince anyone I was irresistible or that these women secretly wanted me. That's not the point." He pauses, gathering his thoughts. "I'm dissecting desire, how it evolves over a lifetime, transforms from hunger to memory, from impulse to gratitude. The confessions matter," he explains, "not because anything happened, but because the possibility of something happening reminded him he was alive. Desire is proof of engagement with life. When you stop wanting, stop imagining, stop feeling that pull toward another person, that's when you're truly old. Not when your hair goes gray or your knees start hurting, when your heart stops responding." At 76, Gere says, you gain a kind of freedom. You stop pretending. You stop performing the version of yourself that won't shock or offend. You just tell the truth and smile if it makes someone uncomfortable. Because what's the alternative? Taking all these memories, all these feelings, all this honest experience to the grave? That seems like the greater waste. The interviewer nods, understanding dawning. This isn't scandal. It's not salacious gossip or inappropriate revelation. It's testimony from a man who once embodied romance for millions, and now defines something possibly more important, radical honesty about the human heart. The camera lingers on Richard Gere's face as the interview winds down. The silver hair catches the light. The eyes, still sharp, still amused, hold the gaze. That legendary smile, slightly crooked, simultaneously charming and melancholic, plays across his features. This is the face that once sold billions of dollars worth of fantasies, now offering something more valuable: truth. The narrator's voice returns, bringing the confession full circle. 6 names, 6 decades. One fundamental truth: desire doesn't age, it adapts, it matures. It becomes something richer and stranger and more honest than youth could ever imagine. Gere's laughter fills the studio one final time, genuine and unforced. "Maybe I was the one chasing fantasies all these years," he muses. Or maybe, and this is the part that keeps me up at night, maybe they were chasing me too, and we were all just too professional, too cautious, too concerned with reputation to ever find out. He stands, shaking the interviewer's hand, and there's a finality to the gesture, not of endings, but of completion. The man who spent his career playing desire now finally understands it, has lived long enough to articulate what it means when the fire doesn't die but transforms into something more complex and beautiful. The screen fades to black, but his final words echo. At 76, I've learned that the loves you didn't pursue haunt you just as much as the ones you did. Maybe more. Because possibility never ages. It stays perfect, untarnished, forever young in memory, unlike us. And somewhere in that confession lies the truth about all of us. That desire, in all its forms, is what keeps us connected to life, to each other, to the possibility that despite all evidence to the contrary, we're still capable of being surprised by our own hearts. Some legends never stop telling the truth. They just wait long enough to make sure everyone's ready to hear it.